How easily can you bring your full attention, energy, and intelligence to your daily tasks? This ability is like a muscle that can be trained through exercise. In this episode, we show you how to do it. I'm Sharif with Dr. Kevin Majeres. This is the Golden Hour. Welcome to another episode of the Golden Hour. I'm Sharif here with Dr. Kevin Majeres. Kevin, welcome. How are you doing?
Great, Sharif. Good to be here.
Great. And we have a great session planned today. We want to talk about the importance of attention training and mindfulness. Kevin, how do you feel about those topics in general? Is mindfulness an important thing to be doing?
Yeah, well, let's get into that. I'm excited about this idea of what does it take for people to most efficiently be able to work, to most effectively be able to work, so that when you're engaging a task, it actually requires like less effort to do it, but you get it done better. It's kind of like I think that the way we prepare ourselves to actually do a task, you could be like a 2013 MacBook or a 2020 MacBook. Okay, so like the older model, it like doesn't have the best hardware or software, and it has to work so hard for a particular computation.
Yeah, you hear the sound, it gets hot, the fan's running.
Yeah, the fan's running is doing so much, whereas like the later model is able to just efficiently do the computation, like effortless. And so the amount of energy expended to do it ends up being much, much less. And I think that's what happens. The better we are at preparing ourselves for attention and for work, then the easier it is for us to get that done and to do it really well. And so I think that we talk all about flow as, it's a form of effortless attention. But really, any kind of good work, whether it's technically flow or not, should in that kind of way be effortless in that you are able to lock onto a task. And when you set yourself to do something, your attention stays there. And then part of you is able to slightly hover and to be aware when your attention leaves it so you can bring it back. Or when there's a potential rabbit hole you could go down, and then you bring it back. So that ability to engage a task, and yet there's a little bit of hovering above it so you can kind of see what to do and then totally engage it. So the more I've been thinking about it, the more I see that we need to exercise our attention and support it before starting to work, and then we are more like that 2020 or the more recent MacBook, that we have better connectivity in our brain. And so I think there are two forms of exercise that do that: physical exercise and attention exercise.
Yeah, I first got interested in mindfulness in the context, more in the context of leisure, actually, because I would be watching a movie or reading a book or listening to music. Actually, this would happen especially, I would be listening to music while I was walking to the gym, and then I just found I had no idea what I was listening to after 2 minutes because my mind was just wandering, or I couldn't follow movies. So yeah, it was a kind of then later thing, finding out how valuable it was when applied to work, but it makes a ton of sense. So two forms of training your attention: physical exercise and attention. So what does that look like?
Yeah, just to briefly mention the physical because it's more simple, but how easy it is for your brain to do work depends on the connectivity between neurons. And that has to do entirely with how fully filled out those neuronal trees are. So if you think of a neuron as like a tree without leaves in the winter, you want millions of little tiny twigs everywhere. But chronic stress, like lockdowns and pandemics and unrest, chronic stress and high cortisol end up shearing off those little twigs, which means now your neurons' abilities to talk to each other are really significantly reduced, which means it takes a lot more work to get things done. And you feel kind of foggy. So people, who are under chronic stress, their thinking is less, it's just less crisp, and their memory is less crisp. Uh, One time of intense exercise is enough to get your neurons to fully put those twigs back out. And it has to do with the growth factor. And we've talked about that in previous episodes. But it's just to say that it's interesting, right? That like a burst of physical exercise that you would do, sprints increase this effect by 50%, is enough that when you, a couple hours later, are going to work, you actually have a much greater connectivity. It's like you've changed the hardware of your brain. You went from that 2013 to 2020 model just by exercise, and it lasts for 2 days at
How
least.
does that specifically improve the attention? As I think we've talked about it in the past in the context of, well, I just associate with like feeling kind of clear versus feeling more fuzzy. So
Hmm.
that kind of clarity of thought. But so can you just draw a little bit that the connection between that kind of feeling and what attention is?
Well, the better your neurons are at talking to each other, the
Mm-hmm.
more rich their dendritic branches are. The better they are at communicating then in sync. And so attention is like attending to one object means that all these neurons, especially in your prefrontal cortex, have all gotten now in sync together. But their ability to sync up depends a lot on their dendritic trees, their branches, that they have to be super twiggy and branchy to easily get into that kind of dance of synchrony. Which, when you're trying to just focus on one task, what you see are in the EEG, you see theta waves. So there's this concept of theta locking or theta phase locking. I like calling it theta locking for short, where you get locked into these theta wave patterns, and that means your attention is locked on to one object. But you can still be aware of if your mind wanders, and then bring it back and re-engage. And so, but that synchrony happens more easily the healthier your neurons are. So that's why physical exercise, it makes this kind of theta locking on task, it makes it much more effective. But then you can directly strengthen your ability to theta lock. And that is what happens when you practice mindfulness. Really, any form of focused attention where you're in some way bringing a kind of stillness and silence to your attention. And then you're able to see yourself like in a mirror, and you see how flighty your mind is and how it's wandering. And then you keep stilling it, like anchoring yourself on one thing you're focusing on. And then detecting quickly when your attention wanders, and then disengaging from that and refocusing on the thing that you're looking for. So there are these skills you practice, and those actually make your lock onto the intended object. Like in this case of mindfulness, it could be something like the breath. It makes it much more powerful.
So when you're doing mindfulness, you can generally focus on anything in the present moment. And it's usually a sensation. So mindfulness is just simply focusing your attention on something in the present moment. Does it always have to be a sensation? Like I just think of it in terms of like sounds or touch or something of that nature. But I guess it can also be watching your own thoughts. Sometimes people do that, or like the body scan. But so could you just fill that picture out, or
Yeah.
is there a
So
structure there?
there are two different things that you can practice. The core of focused attention training is the ability to be aware of the mind wandering, disengage from what it wandered to, and refocus back on the intended object. So that strengthens a certain kind of ability to lock onto task. There is like as part of that first step, the ability to like detect mind wandering. There's a way of specifically practicing that called open awareness. And with that, you just learn to be aware of where your mind is going without trying to direct it. And then so you like notice thoughts come in and out. This like a good example of this is the bubble wand exercise. Again, it's kind of a funny thing, but you just imagine that you're like, you sit with your eyes closed and you wait for a thought to enter. And as soon as words enter your mind or image, you imagine it leaving your mind, and then you tap it with an imaginary wand and it puts a bubble around it and it floats away. And you just wait for the next one to arise. And so, and when the next one arises, you imagine it leaving your head as like words written down like a cartoon, or an image, and then you tap it, and that encapsulates it in a bubble, and it floats away. And you wait for the next one. That would be one form of practicing open awareness. That sets the stage in a way for a more focused attention. I think that thoughts like words or images, those are auditory or visual. Those you can practice disengaging from with open awareness exercises. But the sense of touch is the best way of doing focused attention training, as a mindfulness practice, because the sense of touch doesn't bring in any other associations. So when you feel your breath, the breath doesn't remind you of anything else. But if you're listening to sounds around you, and then you hear the sound of hammering in the distance, and you think, oh, I need to fix the sink in the bathroom. And so there's something about sounds and sights that, just because they're so powerfully part of your association cortex, that they just trigger other thoughts so much that it's hard to use them as the object of focused attention, but they're great for open awareness training.
Okay. So
And
actually,
both of those are important elements of sustained attention.
some people might be confused that, so breath and touch, how are those related?
Oh, yeah. I think, yeah, you feel your breath with a sense of touch.
Oh, like an internal sense of touch?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, in fact, if you're aware of the breath in your body, you could be aware of the sense of life in your body. But you are aware of the sense of the life of your body through touch, by actually feeling the sensation of your whole body all at once. And it really is like your very act of being is something that you are touching. And so you can be locked into it and there's, the more you practiced you are at focused attention, the easier it is then to stay in silence in your mind while you're simply touching the sensation, you could say, of your breath or of the life of your body or your act of being.
And so how does, when we talk about anxiety, there's the amygdala sounds the alarm. So you get the rush of adrenaline and you might feel tightness in your chest. How does the mindfulness of the sensation of emotion, anxiety, or maybe emotion in general, how does that fit into this picture?
Yeah, so it's the same sense of touch. You have to open up to physically feel the emotions you're feeling. And that doesn't mean thinking about them. And that's why they say that mindfulness is a non-judgmental awareness of a present sensation. And I think that non-judgmental just means, in part, that your intellect isn't involved at all. There's no evaluation or, rating, is this fitting or unfitting or good or bad. It's just total openness to what is and holding that openness there. So the sense of touch in that sense is non-judgmental. And then you physically feel it in your chest. I like people, if I'm going to be doing any kind of emotional work with them in the sense of helping them over anxiety or anger or whatnot, I really do like them to have a lot of practice at feeling the sensation of the breath in their chest, particularly the front of their chest, because that's where you feel emotion, in a sense, the most efficiently. But my point here is simply that all of that kind of attention training, spending 15 minutes a day just to doing focused attention training, which is anchor yourself on one thing, notice that when your mind wanders off, let go of whatever it went to and bring it back. Just doing that, exercising those moves again and again and again, it builds up your ability to intensely engage a task with fewer and fewer distractions, which means less and less effort in your workday. Because like a distraction means that part of your mind thought up a false step for you to take right now, but that took a lot of effort for it to make all these predictions and to come up with that one. And then it takes a lot of effort to not go down into that rabbit hole and to resist it. So all of that is people creating, in a sense, more work for themselves while they're trying to get other work done. The ability to do focused attention training, say 15 minutes a day as a minimum, what that does is it strengthens their ability to lock onto one task. That's what I call the theta locking, because you get into a kind of a synchrony with it. And then you just get pulled more and more through the task. And so you're not wasting effort with distractions and fighting them.
So now you mentioned 4 steps. So or 4 skills, I should say. Anchoring into one specific thing. So that's what we talked about, anchoring into the breath, and that's the best way to do it, or anchoring into another sensation. And then monitoring, so kind of noticing when you're going off track. And then disengaging from the distraction, and then redirecting your attention back into the thing that you're anchoring in, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that there's typically in mindfulness research, they take those first 2 steps as being the same thing. That to basically, you choose what you're attending, say the breath, and as you open up to feel it, you're setting up a monitoring system to notice when your attention leaves it. And so they just see all that as one step, and they like that's really like you set up the monitor, and then that allows you to like as soon as you are aware that your mind has left to some other topic, you let go of that topic, you disengage, and that's a distinct skill. And then you redirect back to the original chosen object of focus.
Okay. So, I mean, one thing that you mentioned here is the idea of wanting to work without any effort. So to me, that sounds like challenge reduction. That I want my work to be easy. So would you agree with the following formulation that it's not that you want to work without effort necessarily, but that you want to be able to pour all your effort directly into the task with as little friction or kind of wasted effort?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot like if you were to imagine someone practicing pole vaulting. So what they're really trying to practice is being able to get over higher and higher bars. Having them wear ankle weights. Okay, it would be more challenging, but it's not really germane to the task they're trying to improve in. And so by getting yourself more able to lock onto a task effectively, you're able to make sure that all of your effort is directed into improving in that task, not things that don't help you, that are not germane or relevant to the task.
Yeah. And then we talked in the episode a couple weeks ago on sleep about the kind of gold, silver, bronze, no metal system, where gold is when everything goes perfectly with sleep. Silver is where the effort that kind of you do everything right, even if ultimately getting perfect sleep is outside your control. Is there anything going on here similar to that where, okay, being perfectly mindful is gold, but well, you can't aim for having 0 distractions. So what you really aim for is the silver medal of trying to be anchored in what you're doing. And then if a distraction does arise, that you do this disengagement and redirection.
Yes. I think the difference here, so bronze means that externally you're doing the right thing, but there's a lot of internal frustration. And then silver means externally you're doing the right thing, but internally you're also doing the acceptance behaviors, reframing and mindfulness, and of course staying in the challenge. And then gold is that now there's no inner turbulence at all. And you're just able internally and externally to have this smooth course doing the right thing. And so the way that works for meditation is that people who try doing mindfulness or really any kind of quiet meditative practice, and they're troubled by distractions, they either get frustrated by distractions or they're struggling with them, that would be bronze. as long as they are trying to stay to their time of dedicated practice, they're going to get a medal. Unless they were to actually be like checking email during it or something else.
Yeah.
So as long as they're not doing that, they'll say they get the medal. You did nothing else except stay there with your eyes closed. And if you're able to do that, and then every time your mind wanders, you can, without any inner frustration, gently just bring your attention back and hold it there. And then you're able to more and more quickly detect when the mind wanders, let go of whatever it was attending to, instead, gently just bring it back. That, just to be practicing that with a sense of like peace and quiet and contentment would be the silver. And then eventually you're able to just stay there. And so the idea is you want to have a daily practice because it supercharges your ability to lock onto a task and stay with it and not have to fight yourself so much during it. And so that's really what you're practicing. And then, of course, there's higher and higher ways of practicing it. But I think that for our purposes here, it's enough that people learn to shape their process of attending. Because so many times people want to just like sit down and start working, but their ability to lock onto the task may not be ready at all. You don't really know how ready you are for this next time of work unless you can sit quietly and let your mind just become still and focused on one thing without jumping around. And if it can do that, then you can engage the task and then lock onto it.
That makes a lot of sense. Kevin, we're unfortunately out of time, but we've kind of gotten a lot into this. Maybe we can do a follow-up session because I think there's actually a lot more that we can talk about here.
I think so too. It's great to think of it. It's a muscle that you build with practice, and then you just carry it with you all day. The ability to stay more effortlessly on task. But we've always said mindfulness is how you actually increase the intensity of your work. It seems paradoxic, but it's not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we'll be back next week, and let's not commit.
Yeah. And people have questions. Please send us questions. So you can send them to admin@optimalwork.com, and we would love to see what's on people's minds.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Kevin. We'll be here next week. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Sharif.
Well, thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to check out optimalwork.com for a set of online tools to help you engage challenge in your life. See you next week.